Right, so this is a quarter turn cartridge or valve. It's come out of a standard basin tap. Now these are supposed to be far superior than the old washer type valves, but in the UK they suffer from lime scale that gets between the two ceramic discs and pushes them apart or even scores the surface of them, which can result in the tap dripping. Now if you're a professional plumber or a professional handyman, the best way to resolve a dripping tap that has a quarter turn valve is to replace it completely. Now that sounds easier than it is, because these are not all the same and you need to match the valves. The difficulty is that if there's no manufacturer's name on the tap, then matching the valve can prove difficult. This technique I'm going to show you now is just a sort of buy you some time, and it may last 6 hours, it may last 6 days, it may last 6 months, it may last 6 years. But it's a method to buy you some time, to stop the drip of the tap, to give you some time to source the replacement valve, but it may last for a lifetime as well. So the theory is the lime scale that gets between the discs pushes them apart, resulting in a drip or scores the surface. So what we want to do is clean that lime scale out, re-grease the valve, and then we're going to assist this rubber stopper that's on the end here, which forms two purposes. It both forms a seal on the seat of the tap to stop water passing around the valve, but it also holds the two ceramic discs together and pushes a pressure against them, allowing them, to the surfaces to adhere to each other. So what we're going to do is we're going to clean the lime scale off this valve by soaking it in a household appliance descaler. We're going to rinse it off in some warm water. We're going to re-grease the ceramic discs with some silicone grease. We're going to dry it completely, and using some super glue with a brush, we're going to stick a 1/2 inch washer onto the end of the valve. And what that does is, it just, when you tighten this valve back into the tap with this additional washer stuck on the end, it both forms a better seal, but it adds more pressure onto the disc, forcing the ceramic disc closer together, tighter together, and therefore hopefully resolving the drip. So I'm going to go through the process of what you would do. Coffee cups here. In the first one I've poured in some household appliance descaler. In the second one I've got some hot water out of the hot water tap. I've got my quarter turn valve that I want to repair, and you're not going to see it on the camera, but it's full of lime scale and gunk. If I look down the valve and open and close it, I can see it's completely scaled up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to soak it in the descaler. Now what you normally do is leave it for 2 to 5 minutes just to descale. If you see some fizzing, that's a good sign. That's the reaction with the lime scale. If the fizzing stops, then you can be confident that the lime scale has all broken down. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to take it out now. So that's now been descaled. I'm going to rinse it off in my hot water thoroughly. Maybe give it a few turns. Already that feels easier to turn than it did. And then I'm going to give it a good dry off with a dry, clean towel. Right, now the next thing to do is to re-grease the disc, because what happened when I descaled it is it's probably cleaned off a lot of the silicone grease that was between the discs, that allows them to slide past each other. So I'm going to use some high tension silicone grease, which can be purchased online or from any good plumber's merchant. I'm just using a cotton wool bud, which you can use a screwdriver or a little toothpick or something. And I'm going to shove in the open position, the valve in the open position, I'm just going to force some silicone grease back into the valve between the discs. Completely saturating the internals with silicone grease. And then I'm going to open and close the valve a few times to make sure the silicone grease gets forced between the two discs. Okay, I'm pushing some more in. So like I said, you want to completely saturate the internals to make sure that the grease does get forced between the two discs. And that feels good. Easy to turn. Okay, now I'm going to clean off any grease that I've got on the top of the valve in this rubber washer. So the next stage is to apply this 1/2 inch rubber washer to the end of the valve. I'm going to use some super glue. The easiest super glue to use to control is one that comes with a little brush on the end. So I'm just going to brush some super glue onto the end of this rubber stopper. Don't have to be a lot, it's just enough to hold the new washer in place as you turn it, as you push it back into the tap. Carefully stick the rubber washer onto the end, line it up. There we go. So that's all you need to do, that's the repair. Once that's dried enough, I am going to put that back in the tap, tighten it up really nice and tight, and you'll feel the tap might feel a little bit stiffer. The reason the tap feels stiffer is because you've added this extra thickness of rubber in the end, and there's more force on the discs, which means you need more force to brush them past each other. But hopefully that extra force has, and forcing them close together, has resolved the drip. That's a good method to try.